Club 18 Stars, and welcome back to the Legends series. This week, it's a huge highlight. It's our first group interview. So we are getting on Rob, Dave, and Rich MacIsaacs. We're going to do a whole group chat, and the family, or half of the family, I think, to get together to have a chat about their time at Q. So awesome. These guys had premiership coaches, the premiership captains, there's leading goal kicker awards, there's best and fairest, there's all sorts, there's high marking, there's so many highlights in this. And we might get to answer some of Daltz's interesting little submissions from last week. So let's get the boys on and welcome them to the series. Welcome to the series, the MacIsaacs.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for having us.
Thanks, Anthony. Looking forward to it.
Yep. Should be good fun. We're excited here. This is exciting. Group interview. Like, here we go. We bounce off each other, and there's a bit of similarity there between the three of you as well.
Yeah, I think it's all pretty much up there, the similarities, but anyway.
Let the viewers decide.
Yeah, we have got little name tags on, have we? So people can.
Well, I can see them, but anyway, so everyone will get to know who you are on the way through anyway. But I can tell, so it's all good. So, Rich, I'm going to start with you because I think you kicked it off, the whole journey for the MacIsaacs, the dynasty. So, set the scene for the viewers. Where did it start, your Q journey?
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Anthony. That's right. I was lucky enough to be there at the start in 1983. Played in the first game against St. Kevin's down at the Rigetti Oval, which unfortunately we lost. But you've probably gone through a bit of the history of how the club got started already. But a few of us that went to school through Xavier always dreamed about having a footy team where we could all play together as friends. And Martin Varner turned that dream into reality. He was down playing under 19s at Q in 1982. I came down and actually played a few games for them there. And I think Marty went to the club with a proposal that he'd put a team together and a few of the veterans from Q would play in it and he'd bring down a few players. But I think Martin had different ideas as to exactly how things were going to run. And he ended up bringing down about 26 guys to form their own club. So to start with, we started off completely independently from the club. They did get our membership, but they probably didn't get a lot more from us. And I think it really got up and going and had some relationship with Q due to Ian Job, who was previously the property manager at the under-19s being down there, and Marty having some good connections down at Q. So we basically ran pretty independently, but I think it was quite an amazing job by Martin and Tom Varner and Ian, a bit of support from the club to get us up and going. So played in that first game, which we lost. Then I didn't play in the second game against Richmond Juniors, and you've probably heard about the record of Richmond Juniors versus Q in the early days, 150-point loss, I think, in the first practice match. I didn't play in that either. And second game, beaten by 130 points. And then played in the third game that we won against Old Melburnians. And then I think we went for 10 games in a row without losing a game. And we had the famous rematch against Richmond Juniors, and we ended up winning by 30 points. It was an amazing turnaround. Mind you, it was a very wet and difficult day, so that made it a little bit easier for people in the back line to stop guys that had kicked 14 goals in the past from not having much influence on the game. But that was a great highlight. And we went through that season, picking up a few players along the way, and then made the finals, but got beaten by Old Brighton, and I think stacked their team towards the end when I thought they looked like the reserves weren't going to win. So I think they stacked up their team and beat us pretty easily. But mind you, we did beat them at Q earlier on in the year. So it was just so much fun having your friends playing down there. The 11:30 start was very attractive because you could go on and watch the VFL back then. And what I quite often did, because I was still 19 when I started down at Q, was to play, and Robert might have something to say about this, to play the occasional game for the under-19s who followed us. If they were a bit short, I might just play a quarter or so until they got a few more players down. But Rob might want to talk about one of the famous duels that we had down in the under-19s clash at Q. Do you want to say anything about that, Rob?
Well, I do remember I started off down at Old Zavs after school back in 94, and we had a pretty good team, the under-19s, the Old Zavs, and I was playing full forward, kicking a few goals, and I rock up to Q, we're playing Q, and I get onto the ground, go down to the square, and I look up and I see Richard on the ground. What's he doing? And the next thing I know, he comes up and lines up on me.
Oh, no.
Right? So I thought, this is going to be interesting, right? See how Rich, lines up against me. I think I kicked 3 on him in the first quarter, and then he took off to the VFL and never, he just disappeared. So, but that was a bit of an interesting story.
Rob, I can say 2 things in my defence.
Yes.
Number 1, you were quite a good player, and number 2, the number of times the ball was coming down, if you were playing on anybody else, you would have kicked 10 that quarter.
Yeah,
I reckon.
we had a pretty good team back at Old Zavs back then. It was good fun. But yeah, interesting to play on my brother and then play alongside him. So it was good.
And while we're on the Old Zavs theme, one of the highlights of playing for Q was not when I played for the Club 18, we didn't lose to Xavier, Old Zavs, once. Even though they were probably a much better team than us. I think we sort of lifted.
Yeah, I think the record when I played was 11-0 against Old Zavs. And that included, I think, 85, and we were not much chop. I think we won 4 of the 16 games. So we had 4 played Old Zavs twice and made sure we beat them twice.
Yeah, well done. So take a step back for me. So Rob and Dave, when did you get involved? So Rich was there from the outset. Did you?
Rich was there in 83. Rich was there in 83. In 83, Rob you were doing year 12. I was first year out. I could have been playing under 19s, but I didn't go down to Old Zavs. A few of my mates did, like Mick O'Day and all those guys, but didn't think I'd get a game. So I sat out that year, and Rob, I think the Q boys had organised themselves into a social match, and as they were back in those days, those social matches were along the Catholic Protestant line. So Rob and I filled in there, and I did pretty well in that game, as did Rob, actually. And there was talk of rushing me back into the team towards the end of the 83 in the final series there, but I waited until 84. So I played in that first year was a premiership. And then, Rob, you came down a couple of years later.
Yeah, that's
I think it was Carlton All-Stars versus Richmond All-Stars.
Was it?
Knockout, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I got down
Grange Road Oval.
I came down to Q in 1986 after playing 2 years at Zavs, and then I played 6 years at Q. Then I went back to Zavs back in 92 and I won the premiership at Q in 89 with Richard and David and Doltz and all the boys you've interviewed. Yep. And then went back to Zavs. I'm not sure how I got back to Zavs, but I did. Maybe Doltz got me back down there, and we won a premiership for Old Zavs in the Crocs. Yep. Then I think I came back to Q, so I was a bit of a journeyman, and I just between Zavs and Q. But I had a lot more fun playing down at Q. I can say playing with my brothers and lots of mates. Might have played better footy at Old Zavs. I think I trained a bit harder back at Old Zavs and played a little bit better. But I had so much fun just playing with my brothers and all those guys back in the 89 grand final.
Very good. So how many games you guys have played, you reckon?
Dave, do you want to handle that?
I reckon collectively we played over 500, probably about 530, 550. I think I played about 180. So when I stopped, I was about because Hedge started the same. Hedge didn't play that first year. Chris Curtin, he played the second year, and I think I was about 8 games ahead of him when I stopped. So I was, I think I was the record holder at the time. And then Richard, you played 157, I think, and Rob played about 120. And Chris, who's not with us today, but certainly still with us, he played about 70 games.
Oh, so Andrew, you talk about the VFL.
And Andrew, how did Andrew play? Richard was the one.
Yeah. Good about anything apparently.
Apparently, if you believe what Don says.
You had the Danahers in the VFL and the all those brothers, but I think the MacIsaacs boys really were the had some records for playing for amateur footy. Some playing 5 brothers and playing over 500 games. So it was really good fun.
But there's one stage there was Simon Pinder who played for us in '88, and he was a journalist at the Herald Sun. And on a Wednesday, he always said it was a bit of slow news days for the sport back then because we didn't have the 24-hour cycle we have now. So he had us, and then Dad was the team doctor along with Dr. Shaw. So he had a photo of Dad and the 4 boys, and then that made the Sun one Wednesday in 1988, and a bit of a story about the 4 brothers playing together.
Very slow news day that day.
It wasn't, but anyway, we'll take it.
So speaking of journalists, I've read in an obscure bit of text from 1990 in the VAFA record. So the long-time journalist of the record is Norm Nugent, right? He's done covered in the whole time. Related to you blokes?
Yes. Yeah, he's related to us. And we got a very favourable coverage from Norm, given that relationship. So that we got a lot of mentions in the record, and which was always interesting to read. But yeah, no, he was a distant relation to us. Yeah.
Talked us up big time, but I don't think he ever saw any of us ever play. So I hadn't. Yeah.
He turn up at grand final days generally, I think, Norm.
Right.
That's where you go. You look at the face in the photo, go, that has to be him. Got a unique head on him, I think. Yeah, there you go. So it was because blood thicker than water. There's all this. You guys get mentioned all the time. Like it's unbelievable.
Yep.
Like it's the MacIsaacs record. They sponsored by or whatever. So it's good. So your dad, you mentioned your dad was there all the time. He's pretty much there at all your matches over here. That would have been fantastic.
Yeah, look, I was going to say to the boys before, I think we were ahead of our time. Dad was an obstetrician and gynecologist, and I think nowadays every second footy team, we have women's footy team, have their own obstetrician gynecologist, but the Clubbies, as always, were ahead of the time, and we had a resident obstetrician gynecologist, so look, he was a big supporter for school.
Yeah. Although when it came to putting shoulders back in place, possibly you should have left it to Dr. Shaw to do most of that. I think. Yeah. I think Martin might testify that probably should pick the right doctor for the right procedure.
Yeah, he was good mates with Jim Shaw, wasn't he? So he was. Yes, it was great that both of them were down there watching.
Yeah, they were great supporters of the club and went to so many games.
Yeah. So normally I'd ask. So normally doing this one out. I'd normally ask about. Tell me about yourself as a player. But we're going to change it up a little bit here. Rob, you're going to tell me about Rich as a player.
Rich, well, of course, Richard was captain coach when I first came down. Was he? No, not when I first came down, but he ended up captain coaching the team. Richard only could play in one position, fair to say, and the majority that was a full back. And I think his record was that very few players kicked more than 3 goals on Richard. You know, as Dot said, he was a Kelvin Moore. He'd always come through with a fist. He had a good pair of hands, and not many players kicked many goals on him. So he was a really solid full back. Probably in that period, not many people ever beat him.
Yeah.
Is that right, Dave?
I was going to say Alan Jeans at that time would talk about the great Hawthorn teams, and he always say the first magnet on the board, both Chris New and build the team around him, and Richard no doubt was the first magnet on many acute teams, and for a long period of time. I'd say he was the Dylan Grimes, particularly Dylan early in his career when he was just that negating defender and just was not determined never to get beaten. And there was something about him. Richard had pretty clean hands. As soon as he got near the boundary line or the goal line, very buttery fingers, and the ball, he would be the last person to force the ball across the line or the goal line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Accidentally just couldn't pick it up that time.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. All right, Rich, tell me about Dave.
Well, Dave maybe just took a little bit of time to get to terms with the pace of Club 18 football, making that step up from schoolboy football. But David developed into a very, very good footballer. And at times he had runs where I would say he was the best player in the Club 18 competition. He played very well against the Bloods, even in games where we were hammered. Played well against Port Colts, a tough team to match up again. Kicked multiple goals, had a great set of hands. And he really developed into a very good footballer.
Very good. 4-time goal kicking award, Dave. Is that right?
Yeah, look, 4-time goal kicking award, but that was back. When I was playing Ruck Rover for and I win the goal kicking with 25, 20, 28 goals. It's not a great record, but anyway, I'll take it.
Sounded better the way I said it.
If he could maybe have fixed up that hook in his kicking, he probably would have kicked.
Yeah, the only thing that let Dave down was his kicking, because he did have a bit of a hook, but he was a great pack mark, backing back into packs, crashing packs, taking on much bigger blokes, and mainly playing in the forward line. Dave, I think you mainly played centre half forward. Was really, and Dave was a bit like a Benny Gale, big compact mark, but kicking let him down a little bit, right? But really, great player, and he won many games.
Yeah, and maybe grew a little bit after school too. Got to a good height, so he could compete, play in a key position, but be a ruck rover.
And he was a bit heavier than Richard and I were pretty light, and Dave was much heavy, a bit stronger.
Yeah, Dave was
but we were all pretty good marks, and so Dave was probably was the best of 3 of us in marking, probably.
There you go. All right, Dave, round it out for me, Rob.
Rob, and Rob's a year younger. As he said, he was a bit lighter than the rest of us, and Richard was fairly fine, and Chris and myself probably similar build. But Rob was, I don't know, we had 75 kilos or something like that, and 6'2", so he had a fantastic leap. And as a youngster, he's probably had the most potential of us all, and all the way through probably had the most potential. He carved it up in that under-19 years for Old Zabs. I think he kicked 10 to half-time, won under-19 games. He had absolute fantastic ability. Great leap. Was never going to die wondering whether he was going to take that mark or not. No matter where he was flying for it. And he flew through for so many. Some of them stuck, but other ones were just fantastic rides. And was really versatile. Played in lots of different positions. So he played on the ball. He played full forward, centre half forward, centre half back, wing. He was everywhere. But if I had to say who he was similar to, I would say Joe Danaher. The guy that on his day you just go, oh my God, how can anyone stop this bloke? He's just unbelievable. And then the next week, donuts. But anyway, a little bit of consistency issues sometimes.
A bit more of a compliment, Joe Danaher, than Tim O'Brien. I think
Tim O'Brien.
Yeah, I didn't like that Tim O'Brien comment, Ant. I don't even know who he is.
And probably we should comment on Chris too, who played 70 odd games, and he was probably the biggest of us all. A bit taller and a bit broader. He's the only one of us that ever been in a gym, so he had a bit more strength. And he started, instead of playing under 19s, he had his under 19 with us and played all the way through and showed lots of potential. And then I don't know what stage it was, probably he was about 23, and he was at centre half back, and the ball just didn't get past him. Absolutely everything.
I think it was one game against Old Zabs at Q. He took 15, 16 marks at centre half back, just couldn't get past him.
Yeah,
and then in fact, he got injured because he was such a good mark, because I'm not quite sure who we were playing, maybe Collegians. We're down at Albert Park and I kicked the ball out to him and he took this great hang-up and wouldn't let go of the ball and then landed on the bang on his shoulder and broke his collarbone. So maybe if he'd spilt the mark, he wouldn't have broken his collarbone, but that probably ended his career.
Yeah, I was going to
good player.
I was going to say, for all the guys that always had, it was a bit of a competition who could take the biggest mark each game, right? So, and I'll include Dolts in that as well, probably. We'd all just try and go for the big hangers and talk about it after the game. So it was always a bit of a competition who could take the most marks. And marking was really probably a key part to all of our games, I think, the way we could mark.
Because you're a bit of the spine. I've heard early days, even before I'd met you guys, I'd heard about MacIsaacs. We're pretty much the spine of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Chris tells a story that Richard once playing full back, kicks the ball out to myself at centre half back, mark it. I kick it to Dave, who takes a mark, who kicks it to Chris, who takes a mark, who kicks a goal. So pretty unbelievable, right? In a game that they can, the brothers can link, telepathy Ant and just, finish off with a goal.
And Richard, were you the coach the day we had the spine?
I believe I might have moved the magnets around to try and get that line up, Dave. Yes.
Yes, because we had a cousin Angus who played. How many games Angus played? 20 or 30 games, but we did have Angus in the centre one day and literally had the spine all lined up. So it was
And what happened with Andrew? Why one game?
Well, Andrew was I think just finishing his medical studies, pretty busy, rotating around to country hospitals and things. I think it was just a bit too hard for him to fit it in, but it was great. He came down and at least played that one game, so we've got that claim to fame that all 5 of us played, and then our cousin Angus, as Dave said, also played.
Yeah, good one. So I love that story about the kick in to the centre back. Oh, that's beauty what you had there, Rob. So I want to open the floor now and just tell us about some of your favourite memories. What some of the favourite memories you had from playing at Q?
Do you want to? Couldn't handle that to start with. I suppose. For me, from memory in '83 was beating Richmond Juniors at Q after they hammered us early on in the season in those 2 games. So that was fantastic. And then the '84 grand final, of course, was a highlight for me. And David played in that grand final. And I'm not quite sure how we won that grand final, but we had 2 star players. We had Andrew Peters, who was our captain coach, and Kevin Doyle. And I think they carried us over the line. I think whenever we needed a goal in that game, Andrew Peters kicked it. And Kev, despite his magnificent preparation of 21 pots the night before on a Friday night or whatever he drank, he was just unbelievable in the middle, just got the ball out all of the time. And even though St. Bernard's were a little bit, well, they were a much more talented side than us, I shouldn't really gloss over that. They played some dumb footy. I remember being at fullback in that third quarter and just watching the ball sail over to the left-hand side into that dead pocket, out of bounds on the full about 3 or 4 times in a row. But yeah, we managed to win that. And just the joy that we had in that bus ride, the mini bus ride back to Kew, just the great feeling that we had that day. It was just superb. And then 89, I think, another highlight to beat the Bloods. And you've heard about our rivalry with the Bloods, to actually beat them that year at their home ground and then to beat them in the grand final. That was a great feeling, because that was my aim in 89 when I took over as coach. Number one mission, to beat the Bloods. Yeah, so we had to recruit a team to do that, and that's when Matthew Dalton came down. We had a guy who'd moved from Ireland with his family, Maury Furlong, who was a very good Gaelic footballer. So he came down. He was quite a tall, rangy guy, so he could play in the ruck, and that let Tony Wilson move to centre half forward and gave us a bit of extra size there. Ditchy was coming to his own as in the back line, and we had some great on ballers in Mark Doyle, Marty Langton, and a bit of some controversies you've heard about Mick O'Day kicking a very nice goal at half time, where most of us were sitting down eating an orange. He'd snagged one and got paid. So that was fantastic too, just to beat the Bloods. So I suppose they were the outstanding games for me. I shouldn't take up all the time, but maybe Dave and Rob have got things they want to talk about.
I think, I played pretty much the same era as Richard. It was pretty much similar. I was very lucky first year to get into a team and win a premiership in 84. But I think 89 was clearly the highlight, because Richard became coach, and then at the beginning of the year it was like, we're pretty determined we're going to win it. How are we going to win this? Richard lent on us to bring, because all his mates were already playing, so there weren't a lot of new people he could bring in. So it's like, Dave, who can you bring down? And I'll see if I talk Mick O'Day into coming down, and Mick and Rob's here below me with his best mate Dolts, and Mick and Dolts knew each other and were good mates. I said, well, if I get Mick, you'll be able to get Dolts, and so we had another mate, Andrew Tucker, had been playing down there as well. And Chris had a few mates playing. Rob had his mates. So it was just you playing with all the kids you'd known for half your life, and so that was a highlight to have all those people out playing with you. That was probably my most favourable year, I would say.
Yeah, we won.
And to have the four brothers playing in a premiership, and that was something special for us.
Yeah, because for me, coming down to Kew, I always felt like a little bit younger, Ant, because Rich and Dave were already down there. And but it's interesting, when I got down to Kew, it was just, the nucleus of Kew was always old Zav boys, right? All Richard's mates, David's mates. It was pretty similar to being like at old Zav's, because it's really hard to get a game at old Zav's back in those days. And then coming into Kew, you just knew everyone. And I was Dolts came down. I got Larry Martin Langton came down, who was best on ground, I think, in the 89 grand final. And I brought a guy down, Richard Coyne, although he didn't play many games, Coyne, but his sister was going out with Laz. And that's how we got Laz to come down to Kew. So that was really important. So, and then there were so many new young guys that came through to complement Richard and his mates. And it's like that. And that's how they got better and better. And we just knew each other and knew brothers, and, it was all really good fun. But that was one of the highlights. A few other things I'll mention, Dolts did talk about playing against the Bloods and the Shantuzis and all these things. One thing I'll say about that is I do remember playing Bloods, and we ran out onto the ground, and then we're standing in the middle of the ground, and we watched the Bloods come out, and the first 5 guys that come out for the Bloods are Newbred security, with black T-shirts on with Newbred security, because Australian Crawl was playing that night, and Brad Robinson's playing, and they had security guards on the boundary line watching everyone who'd go anywhere near Brad Robinson, right? I don't know what they would have done if we had smashed him, but they were definitely down there, and that was pretty amazing feeling, playing a footy game and there's all these security guys around you watching it. And so that was good fun. And playing against Port Colts was always all good fun. And I remember kicking a few goals.
Wasn't necessarily always good fun for you, was it, Rob?
Well, I remember one day playing down at Port Melbourne, and I kicked a few in the first quarter.
I think you'd kicked 8 or 9 the year before, so I think they had your card marked.
I might have. And then I took a pretty good mark and started the second quarter, and I was down on my knees trying to get up. And the next thing I know, their ruckman, a guy called Spider, who just tats all over, just knees me in the head, almost knocks me out, right? And then I think Rich had to bring Shorey down to protect me, right? Because they were just trying to beat the crap out of me. And I do remember that game. That was an interesting game. But yeah, lots of great memories.
Yeah, sounded like it's frightening stuff playing against Port Coulter. They'd line you up.
Well, look, there was. I mean, they had, I remember playing up on one of the Goss boys, and they were going shoulder to shoulder with him, and he was just turned around and said, "You do that again, mate, you won't see tomorrow," and all that sort of stuff. But they weren't too bad. I think Sandridge, who was the Club 18 team back in '83, which was a Port Melbourne-based team, they were the worst. And I played one game against them, but you played the year before, Richard, and that was pretty bad, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, probably that's one of the few games that I did feel a little bit worried about my health. I mean, the umpire, that was played at a ground called the Lagoon. So you can just set the scene and don't think about a beautiful tropical island with a lagoon there. It's called a lagoon because it was underwater half the time and tumbleweeds are blowing across it. But that game got out of control and various things around the boundary line were being used as weapons, like plastic chairs. Right. And I remember being in the rooms at half time, and I think we were having a good discussion about whether we'd actually go back out again or just abandon the game. But we went back out and finished the game. But the rule was no showers, nothing afterwards, straight into the rooms, grab your bags, start the car up at 3/4 time and be ready to go. Because I don't think we wanted to hang around for very long in those circumstances.
No, did they get booted out or something? What happened to them?
I think, Dave.
Yeah, I think
they went to the ammo.
They were a Club 18. Club 18 was a standalone competition there.
Yes.
And it's totally separate from the ammos. And I think when they joined, they coerced them into going, because a lot of the thirds teams obviously were playing in Club 18, and the ammos didn't really like that. It was a very different competition, the Club 18 to the amateurs. As I said, it was standalone. It was one of the comps you could play there without getting a transfer, so anyone could turn up on the day. And in fact, I was talking to the boys earlier. One Saturday, Barras, who was coaching Melbourne at the time, said, "Oh, look, Brownlow medalist, what was his name? Brian Wilson.
Brian Wilson.
Yeah, he's coming back from injury. Okay, Melbourne's got a bye this week. We'd love him to get a game this week anywhere." And of course, there was nowhere he could play because he had to be transferred. The only comp he could play in was the Club 18. So Tommy tells me he was on the phone straight away to Melbourne, got the call in, see if he could get down there. He ended up playing in the Club 18 that week for Powerhouse, and was getting on the Saturday night, and there's the Club 18 on the Channel 9 News. Yeah, one of the few times the Club 18's made the Channel 7 News or whatever it is, but we won't talk about the other times.
Yeah, well, you're talking later years, or was there other stuff?
Later years.
Later years. More off-field.
Yeah. Well, don't know what you're talking about.
But also, so you don't need to click. My second practice match, my first year there, Andrew Peters was coach, and he brought down his little brother, and his little brother was Terry, who was on the Hawthorn list and played about 50 games for Hawthorn in that 80s period when Hawthorn plenty of guys. I think he played about 50 reserves games. I don't think he ever got a seniors game, but he was a fantastic footballer, obviously, and he was probably the best footballer I played with, obviously, at Q. And I remember once, I think Willow just tapped it down. He picked up the ball, one step out of the centre square at Q and just hit a barrel straight through for a goal.
Brilliant. Yeah. Such good footy to watch, that sort of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, Rob, I'm sorry, Dave, I want to get to, in a previous episode, there was talk, you probably knew I was going to come to this at some point. You missed the 94 grand final. You weren't well. You want to...
Look, a lot's been said about 94, but, what can I say? I woke up on the morning of the grand final, and I had the flu. I had the fever of 40. It was, the going from the hot to the cold, the shakes, and I thought I'll play, and I went out to get in the car and walked straight into the tree, and I thought, you know what, you're not going to be too good out there. So was,
Take any Panadol, Dave? What did you try to get the fever in control? Did you try to?
Well, I had their Panadols and all that, but it didn't do too much. When you got the flu, you got the flu, wasn't it? It might have even been, in fact, the first COVID case. I don't know, but it was pretty nasty. And there's no way I could play. And in fact, I stepped out, and I think I was playing centre half forward. And the guy Seabrook, who was playing down back, he came up into the centre half forward position, and one of my my good schoolmates, Owie Nile, he came in off the bench, and the way he tells the story was, he was best on ground, and it was a highlight of his absolute life. So, he'd be nothing without me. So, look, I'm quite grateful for Owie's sake that I stepped out.
Well,
I could have been a 3-time premiership player.
Yeah. Sorry, Rob, go.
I remember rocking up to Elsternwick Park that day. I wasn't playing, and I look across to see Dave, and he's got this massive scarf around his neck. Right, he's all he's not looking well, and there's chitter chatter going everywhere. Right, Dave's not playing. He's out. Why is he out? And I remember it was a big incident, Dave, back then.
Right. I wouldn't have been much use out there.
Well, it was a tactical play because, as it turned out, you weren't favourites to win the match. You put some Bernard's planning all off because they've tried to put a game.
I'm sure they put all their work into me, of course.
Rule them off. Owie Niles come in, so you won the game by 2 points. So you genius, masterstroke.
I would say so.
Decoy, Dave.
Well, I don't know about that. Was never a decoy.
Decoy.
But anyway,
you want to address that one too?
No, certainly wasn't decoy.
And there was talk that goals were given to you in the record. I mean, that was something that Dolce mentioned as well. If he kicked 8, you got a few.
No. I think you wanted to correct the factual accuracy of some of last week's episode. You might need another 90 minutes or so.
A bit Donald Trumpish last week.
Very Donald Trumpish.
Yeah, I've had a few emails come through the week from other people trying to clear up. People changed occupations. I think you boys changed occupations throughout.
No, what did he do?
Yeah, no, apparently I'm an oncologist now, according to him. But yeah.
Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
No,
Gary Sweet played for the Bloods.
Yeah, he's played for Port Colts.
Yeah, that's right. Gary Sweet. Yep. He transitioned. Lesser known. Yeah, lots of different. Anyway, it was entertaining and colourful. That's the main thing.
It was entertaining. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
No, that's right.
And a very easy interview for you, Ant. I think you only asked one question, and away you went for
very
1
simple.
hour.
Very simple. So, who was the best MacIsaac?
That's Father's to judge.
Put your hand up. Put your hand up first.
That's Father's to judge.
I would say I think David was the best at Q.
Yeah, I'd agree, Rob. I think Dave, as I said, at times was probably the best player.
How many games played, impact on games. I think clearly Dave. The amount of goals he kicked. How many goals you kicked, Dave?
A bit over 300.
300 goals?
Yeah.
I think Dave was clearly the best of MacIsaac. But Richard, what do you think?
Oh, no, I agree. Rob. I think Dave has the runs on the board there to take that.
Sorry, we apologise.
Rob, I think potentially was very good, but Richard was week in, week out.
Richard just solid, right?
Yeah, didn't miss me. No, and probably sacrificed some of his own game for the defensive aspects of playing at fullback.
Of course, David. Yes.
See, you get along well, you blokes. I mean, normally you'd see some brothers that wanted to punch on and say, "Get out of the way, I'm the best."
And of course, Rich was also compromised by his coaching, right? So maybe that took a little bit from his game. I don't know, Rich.
Oh, I don't know about that, Robert. I think you've been kind. But maybe if I was being beaten, I thought, I won't let someone else come down here. Like we were beaten by Bloods, one of the times that David Thomas, who Matthew Dalton mentioned last time, their rivalry for kicking goals, he did get on top of me in that game. Mind you, we lost by 98 points, I think, that day. So the ball was coming down a lot of the time, and it was pretty obvious we were going to lose. So I thought, I'll just stay here and do my best. But yes. Yeah,
good one. So what message would you pass on to the blokes playing today? So they're on the field, off the field at the moment, but what message would you give to the guys about their time in footy going ahead?
I'd tell them all to bring down all their mates, right? Bring down all their friends, all their contacts through their networks. That's really important, I think, when you're playing not so seriously and you just want to have good fun. That's what it's all about. And get all your mates you can, whoever you can. And that's what we did at Q, and I think it was a pretty successful recipe to have really good fun and to also win some games. So we didn't train too hard, but it's all about just laughing. And what we're doing now, just thinking about the amount of discussion around the MacIsaac dinner table about footy games is unbelievable, right? Discussing the ins and outs of all the different players and analysing each other. So yeah, lots of fun. So bring down your mates.
And there's a lot more fun, of course, when you're winning. So we were very lucky. In the time we played, I think I played. There was 13 years in MacIsaac on this. We made the finals 9 of those years. And one of those years, I think we won 11 and lost 4, but missed out on percentage. So look, we were a successful club, and so as Rob said, bring down your mates. Hopefully, like those that can play footy, and and enjoy it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, Rich, about the current guys.
Well, I think just like Rob and Dave have already alluded to, just enjoy your time playing footy. You're out of the game for a long time. So just enjoy the company of your mates and those friendships that you build up playing footy together. And if you're playing a premiership, that's something special. And you have that bond, I reckon, for the rest of your life. So enjoy the time when you can get out there and run around and kick the ball.
Absolutely. So tell us what, again, opening the floor here, thoughts and feelings that come to mind when you think about, because you've probably touched on a little bit just now, but thoughts and feelings that come to mind when you think about your footy days, you're playing footy at Q in Club 18.
Well, for me, it was about friends, fun and family. As I said, it was a big part of my life in my 20s. Your social life was taken care of between March and August. You'd turn up on Saturday, play your game, maybe go and watch the footy, and then everything was already organised as to what you were going to do that Saturday night because you'd already had it sorted out, playing with your mates beforehand. So just tremendous fun, great memories. And as I said, for us personally, just to be able to play together with your brothers is something special, and to have 4 of us playing together in a grand final was great. So great memories.
Yeah, good stuff.
Pretty much the same for me, I'd say. Look, it's been, I think, well covered. This was a group of mates that started the club, and so it was all about that mateship. And it was also they're all young, because I think Richard, you started at 19, all your mates at 19, 20. Tommy was the old one at 22. So it was basically they could build their own culture of a club. And then I came in that next year, and I was the youngest bloke in the youngest team. So it was great, and it was the gang, wasn't it? It was that's who you went out with. You saw on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday nights, and probably recovery on Sunday, and it was just all about having fun. Training was never too serious. It was always, it could be the funniest when you're doing laps and this, that, and the other, and between kick to kick and circle work, which I think was the only training we really did. It was, so what comes back is that family and that fun.
Yeah. How about you, Rob?
I think that's true. And also, I really, we were competitive, right? Even in between the team members, I think, how many goals Dolts would kick compared to Mick O'Day, compared to Dave, right? How we would take the biggest hangers, and how we would beat Bloods. And when we, really turned it on to beat Bloods in that grand final in '89, it was just great. We were super competitive, right? They were tough games. And, you got hit really hard. You're playing against some pretty good footballers. I remember they had an ex-St Kilda player playing for them, Whitty, and he was a really good gun footballer, and we had to try and shut him down. And, just them getting to win, finally to beat the Bloods was just fantastic. And I love that competitive part of it was really good. And just the competition on the ground, right? Just the chatter on the ground and the amount of talk, and we'll be, giving it to the opposition the whole time and having a lot of fun.
Yeah,
they were what I remember. I loved all that.
Yeah, brilliant. So what else have we missed, gents? What else can we cover off?
Well, there was one game, I think it was Richard's last game, 92. We were playing Williamstown, and we weren't in contention, and they certainly weren't in contention because they hadn't won a game all year. And turned up at Albert Park, one of those crappy grounds, and I think we started with 17, they started with 16, but I think, by quarter time we both had 18 players. And then by about half time, we realised, I think, 11 of the 18 had kicked a goal. So come 3/4, it was like we figured out who hadn't kicked a goal. And then come 3/4 time, I think it was all but 3 of us had kicked a goal. And I think, Richard, you over more than doubled your career goal kicking. I think you kicked 2 to that point in 150 games and kicked a lazy 3, so that was pretty special. And then it got to the last guy, and I think it might have been Quinny. No, it could be wrong there, who hadn't kicked a goal. So of course, in true Club 18 standard, we would, whoever got the ball would kick it to him, and then man the mark, would all be man the mark, abusing him, running past him, doing all we could to if he picked up the loose ball, we were tackling him, bringing him to the ground, doing all we could. But I think after about 3 or 4 attempts, he finally. So that was a bit fun. A fun day.
Brilliant.
Magnificent coaching by Paul Shaw to move the magnets around to make that happen too. It was a very special day. I think we won about 220-0 that day.
Something like that.
No, that was so much fun.
Gosh. What else we got? What else? Any other stories that come to mind?
I don't know. I can go again. Do you want to say anything, Richard or Rob?
Yeah,
No,
well, there's one story that sort of sticks in my mind, a very unusual piece of behaviour by an opponent I was playing on. We were playing against Richmond Juniors. Must have been a practice match before, I reckon, 84. And I was playing on this guy, Marcus, I think his name was. He wasn't their gun full forward because their normal gun full forward, I think, was off playing the cricket final or something. But this guy was holding my wrist, stopping me from running near the ball, and I was trying to explain to him maybe I should be doing that to him. But just halfway through the third quarter, the ball's down the queue end, and I hear this hissing noise. And there he is. He's standing in the goal square, facing the play, and he's flopped the on fella out, and he's just having a wee in the middle of the goal square. Just not a care in the world.
Yeah, wow.
So that was quite an unusual experience to witness.
Wow.
There was no getting down on the one knee or anything like that, or trying to hide what you're
fumbling the ball through
the game. Did you avoid walking through that patch?
Yeah, I for some reason after that time, I got on the habit of just standing on the right-hand side of all my opponents. I don't know, maybe I was tainted from that experience not to go anywhere near the left side of an opponent.
No. Wow. I haven't heard of one of those before. That's not ideal. So, Dave, you were going to say something then as well?
I was going to say something just about some of the guys that I started work in '89 at PW, and brought down a few of the guys there. The first one was a guy, Jason Van der Zaan. He played about 50 games with us, and okay, and called himself goal a game. But I think if you rounded it up a low number, you get to 1. So he probably was. And then Tony Hallam came down, and he was, played at full forward. He was a very good mark and kicked the goal. And I think he probably won the goal kicking a few times and kicked quite a few in '94, and was including in the grand final. And then brought down a couple of Irish guys, Kevin Corbally, who came out from the Dublin office, and his mate Dave Byrne. I don't think Dave played that much, but I remember Kev's first game. We didn't know where to play, and we put him on the wing, and the ball's gone up, and of course, his chance would have it, it's come straight out to him. And being an Irish Gaelic footballer, they don't tackle, they don't bumps, and some of the guys just run through him and just knocked him out basically. And I thought, here he is. I brought this guy down from just new to Australia. I brought him down to the footy club. Couldn't get a better footy club, you're social, you've got plenty of people of varying skills. But he got back up, and I think Dave was umpiring that day, and in the true spirit of Club 18, realising it was his first game, gave him the 3 votes. And then from him, Steve Ivac and Justin Eve and Craig Johnson, and probably others. And then eventually, a couple of guys I've been trying to get down for a long time came down after I'd retired, and that was Terry Lucas and Chris Bryce. So a bit of a PW legacy starter through that chain.
Yeah, great premiership players. I think most of those guys you're talking about too.
Yeah.
They're terrific. That's great. Well, that's good, because as you said, it went from your era, and that group, the PW group, were really heavily involved in setting up that next era as well. So, which is terrific to get that going. Richard, your son play?
Well, yes, my eldest son Tom's been playing for Monash Blues, and he's been playing in their equivalent of the Club 18. And 2 years ago, got into the grand final, and of course they were playing against Q, so some divided loyalties there. So I've gone to support him. I've turned up to the Bill Laurie Oval over in Northcote. And then, of course, I bumped into Ian Job there, who's still the property steward at Q.
Wow.
Been doing this for 30, 40 years. And then the umpires start walking out onto the ground, and there's Dave Winlow umpiring that game, the same guy that umpired Dave and I in 84 and Rob, Dave and I in the 89 grand final. Of course, you know him, and he's kept going. Just absolute legend. But we just brought it all home when Dave came out. And, of course, when he didn't pay a free kick to Tom in the first quarter, I could just yell out, "You've been doing it for 40 years, crucifying MacIsaacs."
You've had something against us.
I was able to remind him of that.
He always seemed to the Q games, didn't he? I don't know. He must have lived.
He always wanted to get. He wanted to get the Q games.
So look, I don't think the opposition took too well when he knew all else by name, and
Legend. He's a Superman, Dave Winlow.
He's a good guy.
Rob, any final thoughts?
No, not really. I think we've covered it all pretty well. There's a lot of the games. It's just too many games, I suppose, to talk about. But it's just, nothing really else. I think that really stands out other than that was just good fun, and I really enjoyed my 6 years.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks for coming on today. This has been awesome. Like having the group interview, hearing you guys talk about each other, glowingly of each other too, I must add as well. So it's been a treat. So what have you got? 500 plus games. You've got 500 plus goals. Rich, you've contributed 5 of those by the sounds, but that's
Don't forget that.
But fellas, thanks so much for coming on today.
It stopped at least 500.
Yes, exactly.
Too kind, Dave. Too kind.
Exactly.
And it's great to see that tradition and the themes that were all established in the early 80s, the way the Club 18 is played, and that Q tradition is carried on to today. So it's just fantastic to see that, and to see people like you promoting that. So well done to you.
No, good. That's good as well. Mate, I've got the best seat in the house. I sit there listening to great stories week after week. So I'm enjoying it too. So that's great. All right. Well, thanks, gents. We're going to sign off this week. You guys are clubby legends. So that's it. So excellent. Thanks again for coming on. Remember, boys, we are the mighty Club 18.